It was about 4 in the morning when I had suddenly woken up. I could hear something that sounded almost like an old telephone ringing within my trailer. I was confused as to what it was that was ringing. Since it was in the living room, I thought it might just be my mother or stepdad's alarm. I didn't think much about this ringing that was going on, but at each ring it started to get louder and louder, until I thought that I heard it right outside my door. Did someone break into my house, or was it just my imagination? But once that final ring that sounded like it was right in front of my door was let out, it stopped completely. I sat there for a couple minutes to process what just happened. What was that? I didn't know. But I decided to ask my parents later, as I simply decided to go on my phone and scroll through my apps. Then after a few hours, I finally heard my parents get up for them to go to work. I decided to go ahead and shoot my shot on asking if they knew what that sound was. I opened the door and walked down the hallway to my stepdad on his phone calling who knows whom. I never really know who he talks to, or if it's different every time, but he usually either sounds angry or annoyed. So I decided to not bother with asking him. I went over to my mom, who was peacefully gathering the things to head for work. "Hey Mom," I said this, and she simply turned over to me. "Hey kiddo, how did you sleep?" She was wearing her headphones with one ear uncovered as she waited for my response. "I slept well, but did you hear that ringing earlier? It woke me up and I'm curious if that's your alarm." She looked a bit confused when I asked this, but by her expression I could tell she knew what I was talking about. "Oh, yes, I've heard it many times. We don't know what it is because when we heard it, we looked around the living room where it was coming from and couldn't find anything. We thought it might be the alarm we got, but it's not charged or plugged in." That didn't set me at ease, but I thanked her and walked back to my room. Of course, the day went by as usual, and I listened to music and played some games on my phone and did the usual things. But it stuck on my mind. If my parents didn't know what it was, could it be one of the paranormals? Since I've seen them in the house before. Most of the ones in the house are harmless, except for the ones that bother my parents while they are sleeping. The only reason I'm not being bothered is because I have a barrier of some sort on my doorknob. That barrier being a red and white string. My mom said it was supposed to protect me, so I just went along with it. My mom is experienced in these types of things, so I didn't really question her. She does tarot card readings and other spiritual rituals. So I trusted her with this barrier, so as the day proceeded and I finally went to bed, I woke up again. This time, the ringing was at 7 in the morning, and this kind of thing repeated every morning. But it was always at the start of a time, that ranging from 3 to 8 in the morning, and it only happened once in the morning per day. This had been going on now for about a month. But the next time I woke up, things were different. Now the ringing sounded like it was in my parents' bedroom when I woke up. It was 5 in the morning. And at each ring it got louder and louder until it was at my door again. But this time it didn't stop ringing. Ring, ring, ring. It was now starting to make my head hurt. So I decided to finally go out and try to look for what was ringing. I opened the door, and the ringing was gone. I walked toward my parents' room in an attempt to make sure it wasn't in there, but neither were my parents. So I started walking down the hallway. I had a gut feeling I didn't want to go there, but I told myself I had to find that ringing source. But there was nothing. Not my parents, no paranormal creature, and no burglar. Just silence until... It was the telephone in the kitchen. I picked up the handle of the telephone to at the very least know who did this. I put the phone to my ear. "What have you done to my parents?" I said into the phone. My voice was shaky and breaking as I was trying my hardest to not cry as the grieving started to wash over me. Then I heard breathing on the other side, heavy breathing. There was no reply, but I could almost feel the breath on me. Then tears poured down my face as I now shouted, angry with rage and sorrow, taking over my voice. "Where are my parents?" I was crying uncontrollably now as I cried slightly. I knew if I made a sound as I cried that I'd be showing weakness. I didn't want to let the person know I was crying and vulnerable, but no reply, just that heavy, spooky breathing. But then, I heard someone attempting to gain entry into the house using a key. Fear gripped me, and I sprinted into my room with all the speed I could muster, hastily locking the door behind me. As I cowered beneath my covers, I could hear indistinct voices emanating from the kitchen. The subsequent 5 minutes of eerie silence felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a series of knocks echoed through the stillness. My heart pounded in my chest, and I fervently prayed that the intruder wouldn't breach my room. A second round of knocks followed, but accompanying the sound was a chilling command.
Get up!
It wasn't the voice of the intruder. Instead, it was my father. A profound sense of relief washed over me as I cautiously emerged from my hiding place. I recounted the terrifying ordeal to my father, who calmly explained that he had been out with my mother grabbing breakfast. He dismissed the ominous phone call I had earlier reported as likely being a mere prank. Despite his reassurances, an unsettling doubt lingered within me. To this day, the morning ring of the phone sends shivers down my spine, a lingering reminder of that haunting incident.